Welcome to this session in Helping Kids Thrive. Um, and this session is how to help your child tame their anxious mind. My name is Dave Kohler, and I'll be your moderator, and I'm excited to be hosting this session today. I am pleased to announce today's speaker, Alistair Hawks. Alistair was raised with the understanding of the body-mind connection and through the influence of early biofeedback education and training since she was 12. She developed some useful self-regulation skills and tools that she now teaches to clients in her mental health education psychotherapy practice. Alistair has taught over 2,500 elementary school classes to 2,000 children and teachers and served on Jefferson Center for Mental Health's Speakers Bureau from 2016 to 2019 and has given over 40 mental health focused talks at numerous public schools, churches, and community events. Alistair enjoys hiking in nature, travel, family adventures, gardening, reading, singing, and dancing. Today, Alistair will be talking about how to help your child tame their anxious mind using practical tips and coping methods. As a reminder, today's presentation, along with all of the presentations from the conference, will be available on demand after the live session for the next 30 days. Before I hand over the mic to Alistair, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about the presentation and the Helping Kids Thrive conference. First, I'd like to thank our sponsors and partners who have helped make this event possible today. It is a true community effort to put this together. Thank you to Jeffco Public Schools, Rotary Club of Golden, Delta Dental, Westminster Medical Clinic, Source Communication, and Jeffco PTA for your support. Next, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the Q&A tab at the right-hand side of your screen. We're going to be answering questions both throughout the session and at the end, but if we don't get to your session or you'd like to ask additional questions, we encourage you to attend the session with our speakers from 8:30 to 9 p.m. tonight. Live Spanish translation service is available for this presentation. See the chat box for the number to call, and I'm going to put that in there right now so you can see it. If you're experiencing any difficulties, please email us at webmaster@jcmh.org, and folks will be available to help. Finally, at the end of the presentation, you're going to fill out a session evaluation by clicking on a link that I'll put in the chat. So without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Alistair. Alistair, over to you.
Awesome, and I'm just going to share my screen here. I had a little bit of a problem with this before. There we go. And that's not what I want. Not an expert on this yet. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Let's see. Okay. Oh. Okay. You present. Good. Can you see that okay, Dave?
I don't see anything. You have to hit that little button on the left where it looks like a computer with an arrow on it, and that'll share your screen inside the platform.
Share screen. My entire screen. Share.
There you go.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yay. Hello, everybody. I'm here to talk about how to tame your child's anxious mind. Want to just put a plug out there for Colorado Crisis Services. I think it's important to know that we have these resources available 24/7. You can go to the Walk-in Crisis Center. You can have make a request for somebody to come out and see you mobily. There's respite care where somebody will help you take care of somebody else. And Colorado Crisis Services is one of Jefferson Center's partners, so good resource to know about. I would like to start with this picture that just kind of illustrates that mental illness and the teenage brain kind of look alike. And if you are parenting children of any age, really, but teenagers in particular, mental illness and puberty often look similar. So, funny picture there to see that. Anxiety is what happens when stress is already past, but there's an underlying worry that remains. It usually kind of hums along in the background, but for some it becomes this chronic state. And if it becomes a more extreme example of anxiety would manifest as a panic attack, but anxiety is just kind of this low-level worry. And typically, we can manage anxiety on a moment-to-moment basis, but when it becomes chronic, when it becomes something that is interfering with your daily life, that's when it's a problem that you really want to address through some body coping strategies, through some mind coping strategies, through some emotional coping strategies, and we'll talk about those later. What makes your child anxious? I really wish this were more of a dialogue between me and the attendees here. This presentation is way more fun to give in person. I would love to hear what makes your child anxious. But I'll just say, in my experience working in the school system, working with children who've somehow ended up in the human services system through foster care, through youth corrections, these are the things that I've observed. Younger children with anxiety look irritable, frustrated. Starting school, lack of coping strategies cause anxiety in children. Maybe separation from parents or family members. Things like having a parent get remarried or the birth of a sibling can also cause stress or anxiety in children. Problems with friends, problems at home also cause anxiety in children. It can show up as fears of the dark, fears of being alone, being clingy, being moody, grouchy, or also children who have regression in behaviors, like a toddler who may have achieved potty training, has a stressful or anxious experience, and then they kind of regress and they forget that they have control over those systems. Or maybe an older child who seems really well adapted, well adjusted, might start acting more like they're a younger version of themselves. So these are ways that you can start identifying anxiety in children. Anxiety in teens caused by a variety of stressors like juggling homework and part-time jobs. I think COVID is really affecting the young people. I have a 17-year-old daughter. This is her senior year. Last year, kind of when the brakes got put on in March, I think all of our children, I don't know about the younger ones because I wasn't in the school system then, but I sure know that the teenagers felt this in their school life, in their social life. And so that caused a lot of anxiety in teenagers. Social activities, bullying, peer pressure, these are all things that cause anxiety in teenagers. Interpersonal relationships or their relationships at home can cause anxiety. And you can help your kiddo identify anxiety by just learning to recognize these symptoms and helping them recognize the symptoms as well. Also teaching them healthy coping strategies, which I will go over in a little while. Other causes of teen stress: worrying about schoolwork, juggling responsibilities, sexual activity, changing schools, moving, having negative thoughts about themselves, self-esteem issues, body changes, seeing parents struggle, having financial problems, living in an unsafe neighborhood. I taught this class over at Stein Elementary of fifth graders, and this class could not settle down. And after 3 or 4 class periods where it was just, there were so many negative behaviors in the classroom, we sat down and we had a circle group where I asked about the kinds of things that were making it hard to focus in class. And a lot of those children were dealing with violence in their neighborhood, hearing gunshots, having people be assaulted in their vicinity. And so those kinds of worrisome things that happen in the community really cause behavior problems in teens. And what teens don't get is that those stressors are actually the cause of the behaviors that they're struggling with. And so helping them make those connections can be really helpful. Other causes of stress, figuring out what to do after high school. If your kiddo is not quite sure whether they want to go to college or to a trade school, or maybe you have a 6th grader who's moving on into middle school and they're not quite sure how to navigate things socially, those things can cause stress. Anxiety is a form of emotional stress. Please, if I'm going to quickly put a note in the chat so Dave can ask me to slow down. Again, recognizing teen stress, anger, irritability, lots of crying, emotional dysregulation, withdrawing from activities and people, having trouble sleeping or oversleeping, too much worry, like maybe they're preoccupied with worrisome thoughts, eating too much, not eating at all, having physical symptoms like stomach aches or headaches or the kind of phantom pains, fatigue, no energy. Using drugs or alcohol can be a symptom of stress or anxiety. When it's important to call a professional. If your teen is overwhelmed, you might hear them say, "Oh, I just can't manage it," or just kind of shutting down can be a sign of overwhelm. If they're talking about self-harm or they're actually engaged in self-harming behavior. I got a call in the last couple of days about a 12-year-old who is really struggling whenever they feel like they've done something wrong or bad, they'll hit themselves in the face. And so any of those kinds of behaviors, banging their heads on walls or punching walls, mentioning thoughts of suicide. I think this is really, really important to recognize because I think as a parent, if you hear a kiddo talking about not wanting to be here, which would be like a passive suicidal statement, we get scared and we're not quite sure what to do about that. But that's a really good sign that you might need some professional help for your kiddo. If you're noticing signs of depression or this kind of high-level anxiety, really important to get help in the community. And of course, if they're using drugs or alcohol, it's really, really important to nip that in the bud. There's a slide, I don't think I have it in this presentation, where we define stress as this kind of overactive nervous system response to whatever's going on in life. These are just pictures of stressed teenagers. And I think it's important to know that there's a continuum for stress. And on one end of the continuum is what's called eustress, eustress, which is the good kind of stress. It keeps us motivated, it keeps us pressing along and keeps us engaged in whatever it is that we're doing. And so eustress is the good kind of stress. That would be like passion for your job or passion for helping people or a deep interest in whatever the topic is that they're studying in school, or a real interest in creating a community program or being involved in a community program. That kind of stress is a good kind of stress. It helps keep you engaged in whatever it is that you're doing. And on the other end of that continuum is what's called distress. We all have been in distress at times. Distress is when stress is too much, it becomes overwhelming, and often will cause a shutdown kind of behavior. And so remember the continuum. And on one side of the continuum is the good kind of stress, and on the opposite end of the continuum is distress. And we really need to get help before we hit distress. So younger kids are going to show things like excessive fear. Worries might show up like they're afraid of something in the closet or something under the bed, a feeling of inner restlessness, or a tendency to be really wary and vigilant, maybe hyper vigilant even, like really aware of where's mom or where's dad or where's sister or where's brother or what's happening in the home. Even in the absence of an actual threat, some teenagers describe feelings of continual nervousness, restlessness, or extreme stress. And all of these are signs of anxiety, emotional stress. Sorry, that's repetitive. So anxiety during adolescence, kids are going to worry about how their body looks. They're really interested in social acceptance. They want to be accepted. They want to be part of the group. If they're not part of the group, that might be an anxiety trigger. Conflicts about independence, maybe the interpersonal relationship with their parents or with their caregiver or with a sibling, or with struggling with the need for independence, but really still feeling dependent. So that's kind of like the dichotomous problem where they want to be independent, but they are not quite sure how to be independent. Or maybe you want them to be independent or you don't want them to be independent, and they don't know how to ask you to help them have more independence. When they're flooded with anxiety, some adolescents may appear extremely shy. Maybe they withdraw, maybe they just become kind of withdrawn, or they don't talk much, or you can just kind of see that they're deep inside of themselves. They might avoid their usual activities or refuse to engage in new activities. They might protest whenever they're apart from their friends, like, I can't be without my phone because I need my friends to feel okay. Or they might diminish or deny their fears and their worries. They might get like these kind of egotistical, like everything's fine kind of behaviors. Or they might engage in risky behaviors, drug experimentation, or impulsive sexual behavior. And so if you're recognizing, if you're noticing, if you're observing any of these signs or symptoms in your kiddo or kiddos in your environment, it's really important to start addressing them so that your child learns how to mitigate the problems that will come if they are left unchecked. The wizard and the lizard brain. These are two parts of the brain that play a huge part in anxiety and its mitigation. So the wizard brain is the prefrontal cortex, or the executive functioning part of the brain. What's interesting about the prefrontal cortex is it's not fully formed, online, and functioning until you're about 7. So when you're parenting smaller children and we're wondering why they're not using common sense, or we're wondering why they're having the same kinds of problems over and over again, it's because they really don't have the executive functioning to think through problem solving, to make high-level decisions. Even though they might appear to be really intelligent, they might be able to have really thoughtful conversations with you, they really don't have the capacity for executive thinking until after age 7. And that's 2nd grade. All right. So we're talking the kindergartners, the 1st graders. It's going to take a lot of life experience for you to get your prefrontal cortex online earlier than age 7. right? That's a hallmark of the prefrontal cortex. And on the other side, the lizard brain, the limbic system or reptilian brain, which is why we call it the lizard brain. These are concepts from Brainwise. If your kiddo is getting taught Brainwise in their classes, part of the social emotional learning programs in Jefferson County Public Schools, the lizard brain is the reactive part of your brain, where the prefrontal cortex is the planful part of your brain. The lizard brain or limbic system is the reactive part of your brain. The limbic system takes in sensory information from sight, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and processes it through the hypothalamus, which says fight, flight, or freeze. Everybody has a conditioned tendency to either fight, fly, run away, or freeze, constrict, and shut down when they're emotionally triggered. Now, part of our job as human beings is to learn to identify those triggers and use coping strategies to kind of use the information in a helpful way. But many of us haven't really learned the tools to get the limbic system to kind of relax once it's reacted, once it's turned on by that emotional trigger. Once the limbic system has been triggered, the prefrontal cortex shuts down, or there's a block or a wet blanket that gets thrown on the prefrontal cortex, which is why when any of us is emotionally activated, it's really hard to think through what to do next. Our job as human beings is to learn how to build connections between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex so that we can maintain access to the prefrontal cortex even when we're emotionally triggered. Okay. And one of the best ways you can do that is through breathing. And we'll go over that in just a little minute. So super important to know that when your limbic system is on, prefrontal cortex gets blocked. And so we want to learn. I just had somebody ask a question, how do we get our kid to take deep breaths when they're freaking out? And it's really important to practice strategies for calming the autonomic nervous system or the limbic system when we're not fully activated, okay? Because once that limbic system gets triggered, prefrontal cortex gets blocked. So we'll talk about ways to keep those lines of communication open. Developing new neural pathways, in other words. Let's see. So I really want to talk, before I move on to how we can help our kiddos manage their anxiety, taking diaphragmatic breaths. I usually have a slide in here, and I don't know why it's here, of just breathe. And when we take diaphragmatic breaths, which is breathing down here low in your belly, all right, not up here in your chest. When you breathe up here in your chest, it activates your fight, flight, or freeze. Okay. And when we breathe down here behind our belly button, it activates the relaxation response. So it's really important to practice breathing low in your belly before you get emotionally triggered. All right. I teach all of my clients to take 5 or 10 deep breaths before you get out of bed in the morning, 5 or 10 deep breaths before you go to sleep at night. And anytime throughout the day, you start heading over to that distress part of the continuum of eustress and distress, right? So how you can help your kids, manage anxiety, spend time together, setting aside time to just be alone together, to talk about nothing. All right. It doesn't always have to be about redirecting behavior or just on the day-to-day, but making plans to spend time together. I know when COVID started, my daughter and I started walking every single day together, which we hadn't done before. And it was really great to just spend that one-on-one time together. If you have more than one child, spending one-on-one time together with each of the children individually, and then again, having family time where everybody's engaged together. But spending time together can really help mitigate anxiety. Being a good listener. listening openly to whatever your kids' concerns are. I think for me, whenever my daughter is expressing a concern, I go into that fight, flight, or freeze where I've got to help her fix this. I've got to do something about this. When really what I'm learning and what she's helping me learn is sometimes they just want to be heard. They just want to be listened to. And we can kind of take a back seat from being the fixer or the person who's going to make everything okay and just hear what their concerns are. And then maybe we offer help. Is there anything I can do to help you with that? And oftentimes I get, no, I've got it. It's just nice to be heard. So being a good listener is really important in helping your kid manage their anxiety. Being a role model. And I mean being a role model for everything, but being a good role model for stress management. Think about how you manage stress, how you manage your worries and concerns, how you manage your emotions as a parent, because your kid is watching you. And if you haven't learned how to notice when your limbic system is triggered and how to get back into this more thoughtful, planful, decision-making brain, then your kiddo might learn that we don't really have to manage our emotions, or maybe I just get to blow up and then it's okay because I'm just expressing my emotions. But yeah, when you're a good role model for stress management, when you're a good role model for emotional regulation, then your kiddo is going to be learning from a really great example. Get your teen moving, maybe exercising together, or encouraging them to be involved in a sport, or supporting them in whatever it is that they like to do when they're moving. Maybe they need some sport equipment. Maybe they need a ride to whatever it is. I know that with COVID, we don't have those group activities, but getting moving is really, really important. Maybe they like to skate, maybe they like to run, and just supporting them in getting the exercise that they need is going to help them learn how to manage that nervous system activation. Emotional stress is nervous system activation, and exercise helps it calm down. Helping your kid get enough sleep. Usually at this part, I ask people how much sleep they get. And oftentimes the majority of the audience doesn't really get enough sleep. I myself, I know I need 9 hours of sleep. When I don't get enough sleep, I get grouchy, my patience and tolerance goes down, my frustration and irritability goes up, my ability to be kind goes down. I have a really hard time staying focused, and teens need a lot of sleep. Kids need even more sleep. Kids need 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night. If you have a kindergartner or a first grader, they should be going to bed at 7 p.m. Especially, I used to put my kid to bed at 8 or 9, and she would always wake up at 7, and I tried putting her to bed at 7 and she would sleep for 12 hours. So think about how much sleep your kids are getting. I know it's tricky if you have to get up early and maybe your kids are in daycare or something like that, but everybody needs more sleep. When we're not getting enough sleep, our nervous system is always on high alert. We have these stress chemicals like cortisol in our brain. Once our brains release cortisol, which is what happens when we don't get enough sleep, then we've got all of these stress chemicals, adrenaline happening in our bodies, which then starts to break down our immune system. It just has this whole cascade of negative effects on our body. So helping your teen, helping your child get enough sleep is really, really, really important. 8 hours minimum. And I know with screens, it's really hard to get kids to disengage from that. When I was teaching in the classroom, I would ask kiddos what they're doing, like kids are falling asleep at the desk and they're up late, 12, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning playing video games or watching YouTube videos or texting or watching Instagram or Snapchat. And it's really important to help your kids learn good sleep hygiene, putting the phone away. This is what we need to do to stay healthy. And so helping them learn good sleep hygiene is super important for managing anxiety. Teaching work management skills is a great way to help your kids learn how to manage their anxiety. I remember when I was in elementary school, even middle school, I didn't really know about what good study habits look like, even in high school. Really struggled with that. It wasn't until I went to college that I started to develop those habits. Not everybody is born with the innate capacity for organization and work management skills. So being mindful and planful about teaching your kids how to manage their time, how to manage their workload, how to set priorities, and kind of get their responsibilities in order can be an excellent way to help your kids manage anxiety. I know sometimes that workloads in general stress kids out. And so helping them learn how to manage their work responsibilities is really important coping strategy. Offering support, but not just jumping in and doing it for them. I think this is a tough one for me, when we have to just kind of be hands-off parents and let our kids struggle, and maybe teach them how to ask for help when they need help. Maybe mirroring for them, oh, it looks like you're really struggling with that. Is there anything that I can do to help? And see what they say instead of just kind of jumping in and fixing it for them. Helping them learn how to have healthy nutrition habits. Our culture doesn't really support this. It doesn't really, even in the school cafeterias, we've got lots and lots of processed foods, lots of just sugary sodas, or high sugar content in the foods that are prepared in advance. And so helping your kids learn that food is the fuel that keeps our bodies and our mood and our brain going well, and teaching them what healthy nutrition looks like, which means making sure that you're being a good role model for that. When our kids are young, it's way easier for us to control what they're putting in their bodies. But as they grow up, they start to take more responsibility for that. And we want to have laid a good foundation for healthy nutrition with our children. It's really important in managing mood. Creating family rituals and traditions. When we have rituals and traditions that we look forward to, then we are always kind of looking forward to those things. We are waiting. We're just our mood is elevated in anticipation of those things. So creating rituals and traditions with the family, and you can ask for your kids' input on those things if you don't already have them set in place. But it can be things like the traditional Thanksgiving dinner, always having these certain things that we look forward to on those days. Or maybe we do this for Halloween. In my kiddos' school, they always have a skate day on Halloween, and that's a tradition and ritual that we always look forward to. Or a family picnic around Labor Day, or maybe there's something that you do specially for their birthday. But setting up things in the family that your kids anticipate and that help them kind of keep a healthy mood on can be a great way to help them manage stress. Checking your need for perfection. Maybe you're a perfectionist, or maybe you have such high expectations for your kiddo that they aren't quite sure how to get there. I think sometimes we think our kids are exactly like us, and they're really not. We have to look at them and see them as their own individual, unique beings. So don't demand perfection from your kiddos. Let them learn a healthy level of engagement. And if they're not quite as motivated as you'd like them to be, maybe you can help them by helping them find the joy in whatever it is that they're doing, writing a paper or reading a book or doing an assignment. And just demanding perfection from kiddos is a stressor in and of itself. So none of us does everything perfectly, and it's unrealistic and just adds more stress. So managing that part of us and helping them manage that part of them. I like to talk about suicide prevention in this anxiety presentation because the numbers of teen suicides, even older children's suicides, is really going through the roof. And I don't think that COVID has really helped with any of that. And so there are 5 action steps for helping somebody who's having emotional pain. You can ask them, just be direct. If you have a suspicion that somebody that you know or your own kiddo is showing signs of feeling really depressed or having panic or having way too much stress, ask them, is this something that you've ever thought about? This kind of question scares people until they recognize that it's a relief to somebody who has had, whether they're passive suicidal thoughts like I'd just rather not be here, or I'm just so overwhelmed by things, it would just be easier if I just didn't wake up. That's passive suicidal thoughts, or direct suicidal thoughts. And when somebody asks them if that's what they're thinking about, it's a relief that somebody is paying attention and noticing. So it's really, really, really important that on the distress side of the stress continuum, that we know that this is a possibility. Keep them safe. If your kiddo is expressing self-harming thoughts or showing self-harming behaviors, keep them safe. Reducing access to lethal means, making sure that they've got a crisis number on their phone, or talking about suicide prevention. There's a program that I know the PTA was putting out there, and maybe I've got some PTA members in this talk, called QPR, and Jefferson Center offers this training as well, Question, Persuade, and Refer, which is all about suicide prevention. So taking some training about how to keep them safe, how to give them the resources that they need. Being there, listening carefully, asking them or just being there so they can share their thoughts and their feelings with you is really a stress reducer, particularly for somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of resources. Younger children a lot of younger children, when I was teaching Brainwise, we were teaching how to recognize problems, but kiddos who haven't had that kind of education don't really know how to problem solve. And as layers and layers of stress get added on, then just kind of not existing anymore becomes a real option. So being there, listening for those thoughts and feelings, and validating them and supporting them and helping them identify and connect with resources is a really excellent way to help them manage stress. Help them connecting with the suicide prevention, connecting with a counselor, connecting with friends, connecting with other healthy adults. This is really important in helping them manage their emotional stress, and connecting with other friends, spiritual advisors, mental health professionals, getting them a therapist, calling Jefferson Center, making sure that they are in the queue for deeper support is a really excellent way to prevent these kinds of terrible accidents. And staying connected. If you've identified a kiddo in a crisis situation, don't let it be a one and done connection. Make sure that you follow up with them and that you start to establish these connections where they can see you as a resource and as a person that they can lean on. So just some resources for suicide prevention. Giving them the phone number for a trusted friend, putting it in their phone, making sure that you know the non-emergency number for the local police department, the crisis line, text line, 741-741. There's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Social media has resources for this, and there's the QPR. Here's the breathe slide. Let's all take another 3 to 5 deep breaths. Low in your belly, way down here. If you breathe with your mouth open, it's a much bigger hole. You get a lot more oxygen. And pulling the breath out of the top lobes of the lungs, because this is fight, flight, or freeze. This is relaxation response. And again. It's really important to understand that the breath is the foundation for stress management. I don't know if I said this already in this talk, but I could walk into a third grade class and take 3 to 5 deep breaths with a whole third grade classroom, and the classroom would settle and be quiet and get focused and be ready to learn. So give yourself this gift. This is an excellent way to manage stress. It's so easy that it's easily dismissed, but I encourage you to see it as a resource. Our breath is part of the autonomic nervous system. It just goes no matter what. But if you use it intentionally and mindfully, it becomes a resource for you. So I like to talk about the Search Institute's 40 developmental assets as a way to reduce stress. Developing or increasing, using prevention as a strategy, increasing assets, resources, decreases risk. So the Search Institute spent years gathering information and has compiled it into this resource list of 40 developmental assets. There are external assets and there are internal assets. Of the external assets, there's support, empowerment, boundaries, expectations, and constructive use of time. Under support, we're talking about family support, positive family communication, having other adult relationships outside of the family. And this is a great way for you to help your children identify healthy adults in their proximity so that they know what a healthy adult looks like, so they don't get duped by an unhealthy adult. Having a caring neighborhood, having a caring school climate, and having parent involvement in schooling is an asset for your kiddos, is an external asset in the support area of resources. Empowerment. Community values youth. When a kiddo is part of a community that values them, they feel like a resource. And so helping your child feel valued and appreciated by the adults in the community helps them feel connected. When kids feel connected, it's easier to manage stress. Children as resources is part of empowerment. When your child feels included in the decision-making process at home and in the community, they feel empowered, they feel valued, and that reduces stress. When your child learns to be in service to others, when the child has opportunities to help others in the community, it reduces stress. Anytime you are focused outside of yourself on somebody else's problems, it makes it easier to forget that you have so many problems. So teaching your child that, yes, we all have problems, and let's help these people with their problems for now. That can be a real asset to kids. Safety is an empowerment asset. So, when they feel safe at home, when they feel safe at school, and safe in their neighborhood, they have less stress. I was working with a group of fifth graders. Maybe this is a repeat here. I just gave another talk, and when these kids didn't feel safe in their neighborhood, they couldn't focus in the classroom. So safety is such an important asset so that kids don't feel stressed out about what's happening. I know with all of the social media stuff and everything that's happening in the news with COVID, with fires, with just everything that's happening that can be a real stressor for kiddos. So maybe helping them learn to take a news break, or and I mean fasting from news, not watching news, not kind of inundating themselves with all of those negative topics, so that they're not feeling so much stress about things that they can't really control. That can be one way that you can help your child develop that sense of safety. Boundaries and expectations. Family boundaries, where the family has clear and consistent rules and consequences and monitors those rules, monitors the child's whereabouts, so that the kiddo knows that there's always somebody who's watching out for them. When kids don't feel guided or contained by the adults in their lives, they can get themselves into trouble. And part of that is just their seeking their need for connection. So providing that for them can be a stress reducer. Having school boundaries, where the school provides clear rules and consequences. I really like how the Jeffco schools makes kids sign those agreements about how they'll use their screens and how they'll engage in conduct on the school premises. I think that's just one of the ways that our schools help develop healthy boundaries for our children. Having neighborhood boundaries, where neighbors take responsibility for monitoring the child's behavior. And this means that we've really got to know our neighbors. And in this 21st century, not every one of us knows our neighbors. We don't know the names of our neighbors. We don't know who lives next door. But when our kids feel like they're a part of the neighborhood and that other adults are watching out for them, then that is a stress reducer as well. Having adult role models, where parents and other adults in the family, where non-family adults and other adult people model healthy behaviors and are just good role models in that way, can help reduce stress for children. Having positive peer influence, where it's very clearly set out that these behaviors will not be tolerated. If these peers are exhibiting these behaviors, then we can't really be friends with those people. And knowing that the child's closest friends are modeling positive, responsible behavior, this way your kid knows what the expectations are and knows what will happen if they're not following the expectations. I think an important thing to understand about boundaries and expectations is, if you are a real authoritarian parent, or you're a real passive parent where there aren't a whole lot of rules and expectations, or there are too many, you get the same kind of kids, and those are rebellious kids. So the rebellious kids from the authoritarian family are really looking for freedom. And the rebellious kids from the passive parenting environment are looking for those boundaries and expectations. So as parents, our goal is really to walk that middle line and help children know where they are going to bump into the rights and the wrongs of the world. And boundaries help them do that. Having high expectations for our kids, where parents and teachers expect their children to do the best and to engage in homework and other social activities in appropriate ways. These can be great assets for children. Excuse me. Having constructive use of time. In psychoeducation, we call this appropriate use of leisure time, where we teach adults with severe and persistent mental illness to use their time appropriately. And we can do this for our children when they're young, where we teach them how to manage boredom, how to manage excitement, how to manage hyperactivity, by using their time wisely and appropriately through creative activities like music, art, and drama, creative writing, through child programs or extracurricular activities, through other communities like religious or spiritual, or other things that kind of help them think outside of themselves. and spending time at home, where they know that they are having high quality interactions with these adults who love them and appreciate them, and they're doing other things besides watching TV and playing video games, where they're actually involved and engaged in interpersonal interactions. These are assets for children. So those are the external assets. And I encourage you, you can get this handout. I sent this to Sadie at Jefferson Center for Mental Health and asked her to provide it to any of the parents who actually want to read it and assess your child. Excuse me. How many of these developmental assets does your child have? And if they've got all of them, awesome. If they don't have very many of them, then you know where some of these gaps can be filled in so that your child has the best, most full opportunity to be a healthy, happy adult. So internal assets, besides commitment to learning, positive values, social competencies, and positive identity, within commitment to learning, we want our children to have motivation to achieve whatever it is they want to achieve, that they're striving to do well in whatever it is that they're engaged in, that they have learning engagement, that they're responsive, attentive, and actively engaged in learning, and that they enjoy those things, and that they enjoy participating in those kinds of activities, that they're handing in their homework on time, that we've helped them learn time management and work management skills that allow them to be effective in turning in their homework on time. In bonding at school, that they care about their teachers and the other adults at school, and that they're reading for pleasure. These are internal assets that help them develop this commitment to learning, where they actually decide to go read a book. Having positive values like caring, where the parents tell the children it's important to help others. So helping them develop this interest in just having relationships with other people and having those relationships be good. Where they're interested in equality and social justice. There are plenty of topics, there are plenty of issues in this day and age to give kids an idea about how to be involved in social justice. Equality and equity as well. Integrity. Parents teach the children that it's important to stand up for themselves and their own beliefs, that they have honesty and responsibility and a healthy lifestyle. These are all positive values. And social competencies, where they know and they're learning how about planning and decision making. That's going to be the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, where they think about decisions and they're usually happy with the decisions that they're making. Where they have interpersonal competence, where they understand how that they care about and they're affected by other people's feelings. When somebody's hurt, they've got some empathy for that person. Where they enjoy making friends, and when they're frustrated or angry, they know, or they try to calm themselves down. Cultural competence, where they know and they're comfortable with people of different racial, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds, and that they're comfortable with their own cultural identity. And having resistance skills, where they can stay away from people who are likely to get them in trouble, and they're able to say no to doing wrong things or dangerous things. When you have conversations with your kids about how to say no in a situation that you want them to say no in, like role modeling, kind of role playing those situations, then they've already got the experience of saying no. So it's going to be easier for them to say no in those risky situations. So helping them develop that skill for saying no. And helping them develop the skill for peaceful conflict resolution, where they actually seek to resolve their conflicts nonviolently, where they are actively maybe not avoiding conflict, because conflict is going to happen, but where they have enough skill where they're really interested in making sure that they're having win-win situations. And positive identity, where they have a sense of personal power, where they feel like they've got some influence in life, in the things that happen in their life, in the solutions and in the problems that they're having and the solutions that they're finding, where they've got self-esteem, where they like and they're proud of who they are, and when they have a sense of purpose, where they think about what life means and what they're supposed to be doing here. Like some kids they're born into the world thinking they want to be a policeman or a doctor or a mom or a dad or a nurse or a doctor or, whatever that is, but helping them develop that interest in having a higher sense of purpose. And having a positive view of personal future where they're optimistic about themselves and their own personal future. This is really tricky. Not very many of us had this kind of training. And so it's important for us to look at these ways that we can prevent our children from developing these emotional stressors by resourcing them. We're front loading them with resources so that they know how to manage the stressors that happen in their lives just naturally. So coping strategies for helping children manage anxiety that's just here. Brain Gym is an excellent curriculum that is designed for younger children. I've taught a lot of these strategies in classrooms, kindergarten through 6th, 7th, 8th grade in Jefferson County Public Schools. And younger kids are really receptive to the body movement kinds of strategies. So a brain button breath is where you put 2 fingers on collarbones right here. Do this with me, please. Where you put 2 fingers on collarbones and then a hand on the belly. And these are acupressure points from acupuncture from the meridian system. And then take 3 deep breaths. Okay, so again, getting the breath in the body, but also getting the nervous system activated by putting the hands here on the body. A cross crawl is a way to get neural pathways going from side to side. So right brain is talking to left brain and vice versa. And a cross crawl basically looks like either just walking where you've got an opposite step and opposite arm up, or you can also just kind of cross the midline of the body. And this helps develop neural pathways from right to left and left to right. When you have a kiddo who is working with a whole brain, there's so much more resource to manage anxiety in the body, in the mood, in the brain. There's also a brain gym activity called hookups where you cross over and bring your arms through and you've got your legs crossed too. Take 2 deep breaths. And then switch, so the other hand is on top, and switch crossing legs and take 2 more deep breaths. Again, breathing is the foundation for stress management. So learning different breathing strategies. We've talked about diaphragmatic breathing, where we're breathing down here using the diaphragm versus breathing up here at the top of the chest, which exacerbates fight, flight, or freeze. We can count breaths, like counting in for a count of 3 or breathing in for a count of 3 and out for a count of 3, or where your inhale is as long as your exhale and your inhale is as long as your exhale. And younger children are really receptive to developing these kinds of strategies. I encourage any of you parents who are parenting younger children to do these practices with children as you're going to sleep at night. When my daughter was younger, she always said, "Oh, I'm not very sleepy, Mom." Yeah, you always say that about 5 minutes before you go to sleep. And then we would kind of do a body scan where we would say quiet toes, quiet feet, quiet legs, quiet hips, quiet belly, quiet chest, quiet back, quiet arms, quiet face, quiet eyes, quiet body. And then she would be asleep. So helping them learn the skills for relaxation, for good sleeping habits can be super helpful for managing stress. And mindfulness is bringing your whole attention, all of your awareness to this present moment. It can be when you're eating, you're not thinking about 10 other things, you're thinking about what you're eating. When you're reading, you're really focused on what you're reading. When you're having a conversation with your child or with your partner or with with whomever, you're consciously present in that conversation. You're mindful that you're in that conversation. Mindfulness can be a real stress reducer because this diffuse attention that a lot of us have really sends our energy out there versus having it all right here for this present moment. All kinds of movement help reduce stress: athletics, yoga, tai chi, exercise, whether it's weightlifting or running or whatever it is. Just get your body moving, get your kiddos' body moving, help them understand the connection between movement and anxiety reduction. If they're really worried about stuff, maybe you're going to go for a quick, fast walk and then ask them how they feel. Kids aren't necessarily in touch with the fact that they're anxious. And so we want to just help them learn we want to help them learn these strategies. And then over time, we can help them make those connections. The older children, of course, can understand that there's some sort of emotional stress happening. So you can help them make the connection between the movement and how the mood begins to regulate itself. Doing art, origami is really good because it uses your thinking capacity while you're using your hands and you're thinking through something while you're doing something creative. That's why origami is really useful. And art, anytime your kids are engaged in creating new things, then their stress is going to go way down. If you have an artistic kiddo who also has anxiety, I encourage you to ask them to draw or paint or mold out of clay, whatever it is that they're anxious about in the moment, and help them kind of externalize those feelings. Helping your kiddo learn positive self-talk. This can also be called affirmations or a mantra, if you will. Or if you're Catholic, it would be like doing a rosary, but helping them have a positive train of thought about who they are and what's happening in their lives. A lot of kids who are struggling with anxiety have negative self-talk, and thoughts affect the way that we feel. If you think a negative thought, it usually has a negative correlating feeling. And so when you're thinking a positive thought, it's almost impossible to have a negative correlated feeling. So helping your child learn how to have more positive self-talk can really help reduce anxiety. And again, mindfulness meditation. Tight and soft is an activity that I like to teach to the kids. And even the older kids, if they're receptive to it, it can be super helpful. This is what tight and soft looks like. And I encourage you all to do it with me instead of me just being a demonstrator here. So starting with your toes, wiggling your toes, and then tighten up all of the muscles in your toes and your feet. Tight, 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 and let them be soft. And again, tighten up all the muscles in your toes and your feet. Tight, 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 tight. And soft. And tightening up the muscles in your legs. Tight, 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 tight. And soft. And again, tighten the muscles of your legs. Tight, 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 tight. And soft. And tightening the muscles in your belly. Tight, 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 tight. Tight. and soft. And again, tight, 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 and soft. And then bringing your shoulders up, 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 and soft, up, 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 and soft. Arms and hands are tight, 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 and soft. Again, tight, 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 and soft. And jaw is tight. Be careful, don't hurt yourself. Tight, 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 soft, and tight, and soft. Close your eyes tight, 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 and soft. And again, tight, 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 and soft. Eyebrows up, eyebrows up, and relax them. And again, up, tighten your forehead, and relax them. Now tighten your whole body. Tight, 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 and soft. And again, tight, 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 and soft. And what happens when we tighten up these large muscle groups and we relax them, we give an opportunity for any residual stress that's been constricted, any tension that's left in our bodies from stress that we think might have already passed, but is just kind of hanging out there in the muscles and the tissue. It has an opportunity to release itself. And so if you have a kiddo who's got a lot of muscle tension and stress and strain, you might help them learn how to tighten and soften their body so that they can allow some of that to leave. And this is why some of us get massage. This is why, this is why we do the things that we do to try to get the tension out of our muscles so that we're not walking around like just robots with these tight bodies. 5-finger breathing looks like this. Breathing in and out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. And if you're really stressed, you might go back and do another 5-finger breath. And warming hands is from biofeedback. I'll teach that to anybody who wants to call me on the phone or who wants to be one-on-one on video. And visualization, when you visualize a peaceful body or a peaceful place, your nervous system doesn't really know that you're not there. So taking a moment to think about your most favorite, most relaxing place, how it feels in your body to be there, what you're hearing, what you're smelling, maybe what you're tasting, and what you're seeing. Your nervous system actually starts to relax itself because it doesn't know that you're not really in that place. So a bunch of coping strategies there for you to help your child manage that anxiety. This is a great acronym, distress tolerance, using imagery. Think of something relaxing or soothing. With meaning, thinking of the important things in your life. Prayer or meditation, relaxation. Think of one thing in the moment now, just focus on that. That would be mindfulness. Take a little mini vacation and saying encouraging things to yourself. This is a way to improve your mood. IMPROVE. Good for managing anxiety. And here's a list of resources for you. Are there any thoughts, questions that people have in the chat? That's what I have for you today.
Well, thank you, Alistair. I know for me, just doing those breathing exercises was great after a long day. So thanks for everything you taught us today. I don't see any questions in the chat right now. If anybody has questions out there, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we will jump right on them. Diana, if you want to check in with our Spanish-speaking participants and type those in, that would be great. while you're thinking of your questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste into the chat for those of you participating the link to the feedback survey so that you have that available. We'd appreciate if folks would fill that out, but we will stay on the line and see if anybody has any questions. Let's see, it doesn't love that link. Alistair, I'm not seeing any questions at this point, but let's give people another minute maybe.
Sitting anxiety. Whew.
There we
Movement.
go.
Yeah, get your kid up, get him moving.
Okay,
Online schooling, I think, is super tricky for the kiddos. And I know in the actual classroom, they have fit balls where the kids can sit. That can be a good option for just kind of the wiggliness that comes from just having to sit all day long. They also have these elastic bands that they put between the legs of the chair, so the kids have something to just kind of like move some of that body tension out. They also have standing desks where a kiddo can stand and learn, which can be super helpful for a fidgety kid. So get them moving and maybe provide an opportunity for them to have a little movement, like one of those things that I just mentioned, as their seat.
Well, that looks like our question. I know we are about out of time. So thank you again, Alistair, and thank everyone for attending today. Don't forget to fill out the session evaluation that we just linked into the chat. And make sure to stop by the expo hall to check out the virtual conference and learn and connect with other community partners. And just a reminder that no matter what you're facing in life, it's important to have the tools and resources that you and your family need to thrive. Jefferson Center is here for you. We're open, accepting new clients, and accessing care is easier than ever with virtual appointments. And you can visit their website at jcmh.org. And it looks like we have one more question if we have time for it.
There for a teen on a sleep schedule. That's a really tricky one because depending on how old your teen is, like a 17-year-old is going to want to have more control over their sleep schedule, but making sure that they are maybe not sleeping with their phone, making sure that there might be limits, like maybe you turn off Wi-Fi if the phone is part of the problem, making sure that they are having maybe a cup of relaxing tea as they're getting ready, or maybe they're taking a hot bath or a hot shower around the time when it's time for bedtime, like I'd say 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock for a teen. And also, something just left my mind. I'm going to see if I can pull it back in here. Yeah, it's tricky for the teens to get them on a sleep schedule. I'm curious why your kiddo, like, did they used to have a sleep schedule, but then they lost it, or has it just always been a problem? Sorry if I didn't answer that fast enough for you, Michelle.
It looks like the response is it's become a problem since COVID.
Oh, could be stress. Yeah. So teaching them some of the breathing, teaching them tight and soft. Are they aware that it's a problem? Are they open to intervention? Yeah, I'm reading Shelley's response too. Yeah, the teenagers do think this stuff is dumb because they know everything, and of course they're not gonna want any suggestions from their parents. So it's almost like you have to use reverse psychology with them, and oh, maybe find an article or a blog on managing emotional stress, or finding funny articles, or using humor, helping them kind of develop an awareness that the anger/anxiety is actually something that can be dealt with, and also setting limits about it, Shelley. Like if it's coming out as disrespectful comments towards you, or just kind of a grouchy disposition, you can set limits about it. Like, you know, I don't talk to you that way, so I'd appreciate it if you speak to me more kindly and compassionately. And if just like setting a limit, like if I mean, it's really tricky, especially when they're the older teens. And so I encourage using humor, maybe finding a podcast or a blog or some short YouTube video that might spark their interest in learning a little bit of emotional self-regulation. One of the stories I like to teach, I like to share with kids when I'm teaching, is you can be the smartest cookie in the bunch, but if you can't manage your emotions, you're not going to be able to keep a job. You're not going to do well in a lot of social situations. And so learning emotional management is really a life skill that we all need. So finding a way to present it to them in that way, that it's not just them, that it's everybody's, it's something that everybody needs to engage in.
Great. Well, thank you, Alistair. And just a reminder to folks, I don't think I gave you the phone number in case you want to reach Jefferson Center for Mental Health as well. And that phone number is 303-425-0300. So thank you again, Alistair, and thank you all. Just a reminder that presenters will be available in the Q&A session from 8:30 to 9 tonight. So if you wanted to connect with Alistair or others, I am sure they're going to be there for you. So thanks again, Alistair.
Stay safe, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.